Okay. My name is Lauren, and the story took place about 30 or 40 minutes outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Um, I grew up in the city, on a main street in a busway. There wasn't much like outside exploring and stuff there. But I spent a lot of time at my grandma's house, who lived in the suburbs, and her plan was kind of like one of those things where some of the houses bordered on the woods. So I made friends with a neighbor kid named Mike, and he had woods like right in his backyard. And, typical kids, again, this was late 90s. There was not a lot of like helicopter parenting
Right.
in my world, and also like helicopter grandparenting really didn't exist. My grandma's a little Italian lady, and she was basically just happy that I was happy and with her. So I had a lot of freedom with her. And she trusted this kid. She knew his mom. It was all above board. So she was a little bit older than me, and me being like the oldest sibling of two other brothers, it was like finally my time to shine with like an older boy, right? So I was like excited every time we would go into the woods, and usually it was very innocent, like packed lunches, chilling, watching wildlife, picking up sticks, looking at like birds' nests. I mean, it was pretty standard scout stuff, right?
Right.
Um, and we got bored of it. I mean, I was like probably 11, he was probably like 13 or 14. Um, so eventually one day he's like, I think we should go on like a whole adventure in the woods, right? So I remember telling my grandma that, and she laughed it off. I mean, she probably figured like, where could they really go, right? Like, this is a plan. They're not going to get too far. So she packed us the lunches and kind of like went along with it. So we go out, we set out from his backyard, and it was cool. Like, I felt really brave and like a tough person. And so we're walking for a really long time, and we're talking, and we're just kind of just going about it. And, we're getting further and further in the woods. And I remember feeling like this is a little far, right? Like we're starting to like get to a place where like obviously people haven't walked. There isn't like a path here. It's just leaves and trees, and like it's not, this is kind of like, okay. But again, I'm like with this older kid, so I'm thinking like, be brave. You've got to be tough, whatever. So we go and we go, and eventually we lose our footing, and we like slide down this hill, and it was terrifying. Like, I'm like grabbing at like rotting logs and stuff. Like it's like just a hillside. So we get ourselves up, and at that point I'm like ready to go home, right? Like, I'm like, okay, like that was scary. I'm now like scraped up. Um, we shouldn't be here, is like my little 11-year-old brain. And we dust ourselves off, and he's like, hey, everything's okay, and we're good, and I've got you. And we keep walking, and I'm shaking, right? Like, I'm like really shaken up, but I'm trying to be um strong and kind of like just get through it, because I think at that point I was like, all right, well, as soon as we can go do whatever this kid wants to do, we can go home. So we walk a little further, and I the scene in my mind will never go away. I mean, this whole memory is over 20 years old, and the fact that I can remember it so clearly, it was just so scary. So we like, we come up on a tent, which like a lot of trails and nature preserves and stuff do intersect with people's woods and, backyards and stuff like that. I don't know if we had stumbled upon that, but it wasn't like a campsite, right? There was no markings, there was no trail, there was no nothing. So we come upon this tent, and immediately I see the tent, and I'm like, this is not good. Like, this isn't where we should be, right? So there's a fire in the middle of the ground, just a roughshod fire pit. The tent is equally as roughshod. It's not like a Coleman tent you go pick up at REI, right? This is like somebody has made this tent. And there's all of these sort of like, I don't know how to explain them, kind of like horses, like made out of like sticks around the tent, right?
Creepy.
And yeah, super creepy. And
Uh,
hanging on these, this is when I was like, no. So I'm looking around kind of like, so first of all, like someone's here, right? Like we can't be in someone's like property. And second of all, this is too weird. I'd been camping with my dad and my brother, and it was nothing like that, right? It didn't look anything like that. And so the fire's doused, it's still smoking, no one's around, but all around the ground of this fire pit and all along those like wooden kind of like horse things are pelts. And on these pelts are like symbols in what looks like white paint. And all over the ground of the, surrounding are little bones, and kind of like propped up on those horses are little skulls. So I immediately just like, you know, I didn't know how to process that. I was like, what the hell is going on? You know what I mean? So we ended up running. Like, I mean, just I took off and he took off after me, and we ran so far that we ended up um, on the other side of a shooting range, which was terrifying and honestly could have been probably the end for us. I think that was super scary. I don't know how much danger was at that campsite, right? Like, I don't know if someone had doused their fire and was hiding somewhere. I don't know if they had gone out to like collect more bones and pelts. I have no idea. Um, but that was honestly the worst part. It took us a really long time to get out of there and get home. But while we're at the shooting range, these marksmen and gunsmiths are like, what is going on? Like, you guys need to get out of here, get out of here. So that was, I mean, it was all in all just a terrifying experience. But I mean, I'm in my 30s now, and I can picture that tent very clearly to date. And, as I've grown up and spent time in the woods and spent time hiking and camping and cycling, I still have never found anything that looks like that. So I'm not sure if it was like just some hermit, right? Or if it was something really dark, but it felt super creepy to be there. Young 11-year-old, intuition was kind of like, get the F out of here. This is not where you need to be right now. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's basically it in a nutshell.
So, so, dude, that's freaky to say the least.
Yeah.
So tell me about the horses a little bit more. The you said like the stick horses, I think you described them as like.
So they're not, it's not like when you're like, in a city street and there's a horse, like a wooden horse that somebody would use to like block off the street. Maybe there's like a race or a parade or something. These were like made out of sticks tied together. So they were kind of just like, I want to say like racks almost, right? I guess that's how they were drying whatever it was out. I genuinely don't know. I don't hunt, I don't even eat meat. So I'm not sure if like that was what they were using just to like keep the things up, but that's where all those pelts were. And I know, I think they were deer pelts. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, they were big. So I think that makes sense. Western PA, we have a ton of deer. It would have been one thing to just see the deer hanging on those things and drying out or whatever they were doing, but it was like the symbols on them that was the creepiest part.
Yeah, what the
And
fuck? Tell me about the symbols. What like obviously they were
they were just,
freaky symbols. I don't know if you can really describe them other than creepy symbols, but
so the one that I remember most was with a huge triangle. And that's that's what I think made me realize, like, looking back on this memory, right, as an adult, that something was wrong. Hunters don't really like mark off that kind of stuff. I mean, there were so many of these symbols. It wasn't like an X or something that I guess would be maybe some sort of hunting, but there were symbols all over the pelts. Um, and then the bones were kind of like, so the skulls were away from the other little bones, but the little bones were arranged in patterns nearby, like near these little horses. Um, and those were scary too because they were like perfectly laid out. It wasn't like someone had like, maybe something had died and the skeleton was fully intact and it had just decomposed. Like it was like each little bone was kind of like by itself um, near these horses. So it was extremely scary. I mean, somebody was definitely living there. I don't know what they were doing, but yeah, it was. super disturbing.
What it sounds like to me is I don't want to say witchcraft stuff, some voodoo shit, but that's the kind of vibe I'm getting from this situation. Because can you tell me how big these horse figures, I guess would be the right word?
Yeah, so think of like, like if you have like a drying rack for kind of like your laundry or something.
Yeah.
So they're probably about that high. So I would say maybe 4 feet or so, maybe by about 3, 4 feet. I mean, they weren't like huge things, but these things were, they were surrounding the tent. There was probably like
Mm.
four of them in total, and they each had pelts on them. And then the pelts kind of had their own, situation going on. So it was made. Like everything about this was made. There was not
Mm.
like I said, this wasn't like a beautiful tent you would go and buy to go for a nice camping weekend. Like this looked like somebody had made everything that they were living in. The tent was like canvas. It wasn't like um, you know, nylon or whatever the hell tents are made out of these days.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I agree. I have no idea if it was some sort of like ceremonial thing or what, but it just didn't seem like normal hunter stuff, you know?
Mm. I mean, so you said everything was made. So the horse like statues, whatever they are, they're handcrafted with, whatever the said person could find in the forest. The pelts
Right,
were obviously they were killed and captured or whatever, and then they were skinned, and
right.
then they were inscribed onto, and then it's like a piece of tarp. It's not a tent.
Yeah, so it's like canvas, right?
Mm.
From my memory, it's like a canvas tent and it's kind of like battered looking.
Mm.
But I mean, we didn't go inside the tent, right? We never got that far. I'm glad we didn't. God only knows what was in there. But we didn't make it that far. Just seeing that in Western Pennsylvania is super weird. Um, we have camping and fishing and hiking and everything just like everybody else, but it's usually pretty marked.
Mm.
You're in a camping ground. There's tons of signs. There's tons of, bathroom this way kind of stuff. It was not that. It was just somebody living in the middle of nowhere. I mean, and we had wandered for probably a few hours, and it was just a weird scene. We weren't out in some countryside. Like we were still just outside of city limits. So it was really weird.
Yeah. So just to like paint the picture a little bit better, you to start, you were walking along with your friend, and then you guys fell down a slope, right?
Yeah. So we thought we could just like take the slope, right? We thought we could
Mm.
walk down it, but we didn't have like any kind of hiking equipment. I mean, we were children, so I didn't have hiking shoes. We didn't have like trekking poles. We should not have walked down this,
Yeah.
and we fell. I mean, we just completely like ass over teacup fell and ended up like off path from where we were completely. Um, and we just kept kind of like walking along, maybe like 15, 20 more minutes. And I remember shaking so hard because I was like, this is not good. Like, we need to go home. This is
Mm.
not, we're too far now. I thought we were going to go on like, an hour journey. We're walking for hours now. Um, so yeah, we end up walking a little bit after we fall down. And that's when we came upon the tent, which now thinking about it logistically, maybe that ridge or whatever was kind of keeping it out of sight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's exactly it, right? So we're walking, we fall, we keep walking, and then we stumble upon. I mean, it's just in the middle of like a thicket of trees. Um, there was no trail, there was no path to it. It was just there.
So you falling down this slope or whatever it may be, it made a commotion, but the area where the tent was pitched was not really close enough for it to be heard. Would you say?
I mean, so I don't know, right? So if somebody's like living in the woods,
Yeah.
who knows what kind of like detection and senses, and they could have had some kind of like rudimentary trap. I have no idea, right? Like an
Yeah.
alarm system. I don't know.
'Cause
But the person had left the campsite not that long because the cinders were still smoking.
yeah.
So they doused it, right? Um, so I mean, again, I'm not like 100% sure how long a fire will stay smoking, but I remember smelling smoke, seeing smoke, and thinking like, oh shit, someone might be here. Um, but you're right. I mean, I think maybe we could have made a commotion. We weren't quiet about it. I'm sure I was yelling. I was 11 years old.
Hmm.
So, um, I, and if you're living out there doing some weird stuff, maybe you pick up on that, especially if it's a human voice. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's very possible.
What I'm thinking is this person, whoever they were, they kind of heard you guys coming along. They may have like scattered. They put out the fire real quick. They scattered because they could have been scared that it was maybe a game warden or some sort of
Yeah,
authority figure.
that's a good point. Um, I think I mean, that's possible completely.
Hmm.
My thought is for sure is whatever they were doing out there, super fucking weird. First of all,
Yeah.
um,
Oh yeah.
like I get it. Like maybe there's a homeless guy living out there or something, but like, what's with all the ritual level shit? Like,
Yeah.
let me just draw some weird symbols and have animal skulls and stuff lying around. Like, how many? Do you know what skulls? What animal skulls they were?
So I posted this initially on Reddit, and actually someone asked me that, and I was like, look, I'm not like a trained person to know, but they were so small. I think
Okay.
the biggest one probably would have been the size of, I would say maybe like a smaller deer. Um, and then the smaller ones look like birds or maybe squirrels, but like very small mammals. And then of course birds. But um, I, I couldn't tell you like what they were by looking at them. Um, they were just perched up so you could see them right away,
It
and
make
that was the weirdest part.
it makes you wonder if they were with the small, they were small animals. This individual is killing the small animals. Is he killing them for food or is he killing them for weird witch shit?
Well,
Like,
that's what I mean.
yeah.
Yeah, like somebody said on Reddit. Again, it's Reddit though, right? So somebody said it's really hard for like animals to fully decompose to skull level, and it's really hard for them to do that many. So and maybe he did skin them, right? Like let's say he is just a creep that lives in the woods and eats his own food. He probably knows how to use all of that food and skin and whatever. But the fact that there was just like more than one, like even more than one is super weird.
I'm kind of because I'm familiar with like bobcat skulls or horses and small reptiles and birds and stuff like that. So, uh, if you can remember, do you remember like if they had any canines or if it was all like teeth that were meant? I don't know what kind of teeth they're called, molars. Meant for grinding up grasses and stuff like that. Do you
Yeah.
remember?
So the deer, the big one, did have teeth, and I actually just googled what a deer skull looks like while I'm talking to you guys, and it's yeah, it obviously wasn't a buck. It was probably something without horns, but um, it had teeth. The littler ones did not that I could see. Now they could have, right? They could have had teeth in the back that I just didn't see. But the bigger one had teeth. Because I remember being like, I had never seen a skull outside of like, science class or whatever in a textbook. So seeing it like in person, it almost didn't even look real
Hmm.
because it was so surreal, I think.
Well, I mean, being 11 years old and stumbling across something like that, just adding the skulls on top of it is already kind of a really
Oh my God.
freaky situation.
I'll never forget it. I mean, I don't remember other things from being, in my adolescence,
Hmm.
but that I will never forget. It was too weird and just too like I think it was just so anxious and jarring and scary that even at 11, right, with no real grasp on the world. If I'd have found that at 32, I would have noped immediately. Like I would have just
Yeah.
been like, get out of here. But at 11, after like spending a minute and a half there, I was like, we have to go. This is not good. So it just put all of the heckles up and all of the like stranger danger and this is not normal. This is not what you're supposed to find in the woods kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking that, I mean, let's say it is actually some witchcraft stuff. You can go down the Reddit rabbit hole and find a bunch of subreddits about it. And I've, done the
Right.
same. I've showed Stackhouse, I think. And assuming that that's what it is, it's not inherently bad. Not like,
Right.
it's not like they're out to get someone. Maybe they're just like super into like witchcraft, hexes, sorcery, whatever you may call it. And it could have been some kind of warding to protect themselves because that's what they believe in. But on the other hand, they
Maybe.
could have actually been like someone that was mentally damaged and they were like doing this because it's like what the voices in their head told them to do.
Yeah. That's scary. And there are probably witches that are fine and safe and like you said, just doing things to do things and maybe those were like wards and maybe they were to keep things away, but yeah, it could also be the other part, which was scary because then it's like, where is this person right now? Do they see us? Are they looking at us in their campsite? And if so, like, what does that mean for us? And thankfully, we didn't find out, but I think it was it was a possibility. It was a possibility that someone would be like, "What the hell are you kids doing in here?" This is my weird Wicca cult circle, and you've now sullied it or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the the thing is, on the way back, we were full sprint running. We ended up running onto like the road that is probably about 15 minutes away from where we lived, like where my grandma lived and where he lived. And we had to walk basically on the road back. And we didn't talk the whole way back. Like there was no, what do you think that was? We were both just like, oh shit, we could have died just now. This was a really bad idea. And that was the last time we ever did that. But we never talked about it again. That's how scared we were. I never told my grandmother. I never told anyone, probably until like a few years later. I remember like confiding in a close friend, and she was like, I don't think what you saw was good. And I was like, yeah, I don't either. So it was very strange, very scary, and very jarring because it was so out of place.
There was a guy that I talked to about coming on the show a long time ago. Long story short, he ended up not coming on the show. Just because I don't think there was any particular reason why. It didn't work out because
Mm-hmm.
he was dealing with some stuff and was really busy, and we just couldn't find a time frame. Um, but he told me this story, and this is the whole reason I wanted him to come on. It was like, this is some really dark shit, and
Okay.
he basically was getting close to his adulthood at this time that this took place, and he was like 16, 17, I think, when this was happening. He lived in he didn't live in the US. He was foreign, but he told me that his father had this new girlfriend and she had moved in pretty quick, and like just a bunch of weird paranormal like level shit started happening around the house, and like the behavior of his father changed dramatically in the coming months after that. And then just like he went through like it was a long story. It wasn't like a short like, oh, there were a few, like it was a long really dark
Yeah.
few years for this guy. And he was telling me that like this lady was doing all kinds of weird hexes and shit and rituals in the house. And
Oh my god.
eventually, when I'm probably butchering the story a little bit in this part, but I don't remember how it happened. But I think she moved out, or like whatever happened, or like him and his sister moved out away from them. I can't remember exactly, but somewhere in that time frame, they had found like her some hidden personal belongings of her, and like it was a bunch of weird voodoo shit, man. Like in these boxes
Yeah.
there were all these like dolls and like
Oh my
weird
God.
mixtures of shit. Like it was crazy. It was a crazy story, and because he was like barely an adult and he had just come out of this, we just couldn't find a time frame where I could get him on. But yeah, no, he was like some of the paranormal stuff that he was describing too was really freaky. Like the behavior changes in his father, and like all this weird electronic stuff was going on, and like sounds in the
Oh my
house.
God.
Like yeah, I got to some like really advanced dark shit. And
Yeah.
whether or not you or the viewers buy into that, that's generally what. By the way, that's what our podcast is mainly around. We do, you know, aliens, ghosts, Sasquatch, weird encounters, creepy
Yeah.
stuff. That's generally what we cover. But yeah, no, that in particular was he had some pretty compelling stories with it, and I can't remember if he had like video or not. I think he had briefly
Oh
mentioned
my God.
it. Yeah, that there was like some weird there like it was some pretty advanced witchcraft shit. And
Mm.
whether or not that was tied to the weird things going on in his family, but like he definitely said like now that he was out and away from it and getting his life like on his own, he said that it just wasn't, looking back, it just wasn't normal. Like nothing about that situation was normal.
No, no, absolutely not. And I do believe that there are paranormal experiences. And when you contacted me on Reddit, I was like, I went on Spotify and looked at your podcast, and I fully believe that there are things that we can't explain, and especially things that even if we don't know what's going on, we can definitely identify like this is not a normal thing. This can't be explained. This isn't a coincidence, and I am sure his stories are terrifying.
Oh yeah.
Um, but I've had other experiences with paranormal situations, and this one just felt life threatening,
Yeah.
whereas the other ones were kind of like, okay, this is happening and this is very scary. I don't think I'm in any danger, but I do think that this is going on. So, when we came upon this thing in the woods, it was an immediate, like, oh no, this is not okay. This is dread. And, a lot of people on Reddit were like, your intuition is usually right. And they're right. We have that inherently inside of us, built in to protect us. And I think that whatever was going on was not okay. And whether it be like, okay in terms of what they're doing to worship or practice or whatever, it was so weird that we just were both like, And, Mike was like the older kid, right? And the older boy who I really looked up to as a little girl, and who was really brave and knew all this stuff, right? And was a scout. And he even was like, we have to go. We were both like running. He didn't hesitate a second. So it was just not great.
Can I? It's a little bit off topic. Excuse me. It's a little bit off topic, but can I get your take on what you think about whether it be UFOs, paranormal stuff, or cryptids such as Bigfoot or like the Wendigo? What do you
Yeah,
think about that kind of thing?
I totally believe in it. I think that I know it's like very taboo in the culture of Native Americans to talk about skinwalkers and stuff. But hearing all of those stories about that kind of stuff and hearing people's encounters with, is a Wendigo a skinwalker also? Because I think legends with Wendigos are about cannibalism.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
So
They show. Go ahead.
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
sorry. Wendigos are basically people who I don't remember the story word for word, but basically people who have eaten someone else, another human being, and
Yeah.
got so obsessed or involved in it that they just kept doing it, and then it transforms them into this monster, the Wendigo.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think I actually saw on your podcast, like the latest one was about someone who started off by saying like I'm an electrical engineer or something, like some older guy, and he was like I have a UFO experience, so I'm going to go back and listen to that. But I believe that these things happen, and am a really, like, it's almost like a morbid fascination with reading like trucker accounts of weird stuff they've seen on the roads, and people who have stumbled upon stuff. And I mean, if you think about a truck driver, think about any truck driver you've ever met or interacted with. Those people don't bullshit. And when they're writing accounts of like, I think I saw a Wendigo, I think I saw a skinwalker, I think I saw a light or a UFO or a being humanoid or whatever, I think that stuff is legit. I mean, I think that there's stuff that goes on that we just don't um we can't explain away.
Mhm.
And that is definitely paranormal for sure.
Just because it's unknown doesn't mean it's unnatural. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, it when you spend enough time on Reddit, which I assume you guys do, right?
Oh yeah.
You find all these people who are like, tell me if you think like the FBI or the government, and this is like getting like into like, I liked your intro, like tinfoil hat stuff, right? But like, it's kind of getting into that territory where it's like, there has to be someone that knows the stuff is going on, right? Like this, I mean, this can't all just be collective trauma that we're all just accounting like similar situations. And I'm sure that some are fabricated, right? But like some are not. I mean, if you guys have probably talked to so many people who are genuinely afraid when they tell you their stories,
Mhm.
or genuinely like, I have to tell you this because I think it's true. I'm assuming you guys too. I mean, you have a whole podcast dedicated to it, but for sure.
My whole thing is your story is your story, so I'm not going to tell you if you're right or wrong.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean I believe it. There are certain things that I look out for. I listen to when
Okay.
people tell their stories, and that'll help me like dictate whether they're serious or if they're fabricating. Because like, not you specifically, because I don't want anyone to feel like I'm attacking them personally that we've had on. But there are some times where people may take liberties and exaggerate something, which you got to take account for. But there are definitely stories like our most recent guest, who I'm just like, I completely believed everything he said about Bigfoot, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it was Bigfoot. I'm sorry. I think I said
Oh yeah.
UFOs, but
Yeah, no, Daniel was awesome. Also, what was the other one? One of my other favorites was 18. My friend went missing in the D. It was D.
Oh yeah, the missing 511 case. That was really intense to listen to, and like, here's his story.
Yeah, no, that's one of the freakiest ones we've ever heard, and I 100% believe his story because every ounce of it just seemed very genuine.
yeah.
And yeah, that's actually one of the highest ones that I would recommend to anybody that's watching us is look up episode 18, My Friend Went Missing in the Forest.
Oh,
Very, very disturbing of a
okay.
story. It is before we had this nice studio and setup. It was back in the before times, but it was it's the audio is pretty sound, so don't worry about it. But it
Okay.
isn't as nice as everything is today. But the story itself is very disturbing, and it's very tragic. And I felt for him, man. I really did, because basically the
Oh,
story
man.
goes that him and his friend. This was back in, what was it, 90s, also like early 90s, I
Mhm.
think. And they were allowed to go out into the woods. They were scouts. They camping. They lived in a logging area, and
Yeah.
they were allowed to go up on the mountain and do their little camping trip for their scout badge. And they they were out there joking, and the rule was they had to call in on their little radio and stuff to their parents, and every hour or whatever it was. And they heard this weird sound in the forest in the middle of the night that we went into depth to pretty deep with him. We don't really like. We tried not to focus on the sound too much because it could be unrelated, but he'd said that he still can't identify the sound to this day, and he's
Well,
been in the military, and he's heard artillery and loud sounds, and he said that this just was
yeah.
very unusual. And they were making jokes about the sound. They weren't scared of it. They heard this big mechanical like sound in the out in the middle of the forest in the middle of the night, and they were making like fart jokes about it because they were like 11.
Yeah, of
And
course.
you know, his friend stepped just, they were mid conversation making jokes about it when his friend stepped outside of the firelight to where his friend couldn't see him. And he said that it was like, basically like he got disconnected from a phone call. And
Ugh,
his friend just stopped talking like mid sentence. And FBI came out, everybody came out, they never found him.
oh my god.
And he said that he was too close to him for it to have been like a person abduction, an animal killing. Like, he said there's no way.
Yeah.
He says he has no idea what happened and they never found him. And I think
Oh
the
my
saddest
god.
part about it was when he said that he's still friends with that kid's dad, and this was like 30 years ago. And he said
Yeah.
he's still friends with that kid's dad, and they actually went up a couple years ago because they're clearing the area for development, and they actually went up there and asked the loggers and stuff doing the clearing, like, hey, have you found a shoe? And they stopped by the ranger station to see if they had found anything. And like, that's just like that. It's a heartbreaking. It really is a heartbreaking story, and I really feel for him. And his story, unfortunately,
Yeah.
isn't unique. Like the whole missing
No.
411 stuff. If you've listened to that, like the story is not unique, and it's really disturbing. And you know, it really
Oh
makes you
my
wonder
god.
what's going on out there because some of it's just absolutely bizarre of what's happening to these people and where they're going because some of them are never found.
Yeah. You know, the mechanical thing is something that people talk about a lot, and like mechanical noise, it doesn't sound like a train or an explosion or gunfire or anything like that. I mean, that is so sad. I'm sorry for his friend. I will have to go back and listen to that because I think the woods are like this mighty and powerful thing that we as humans have just kind of like we just keep leveling, right? Like we just keep putting stuff in them. And I totally think that you're right about this isn't unique. I mean, it's sad and it's terrible that little boy was lost forever. But like it's you would find a body if there was an animal. You'd find a body if somebody had just picked him up, right, and abducted him. For the fact that there's no body, I mean that's weird. That's really weird.
Yeah, we talked to him about it for a little bit, and there were people out there that were saying, "Oh, he went through a portal." He was really grateful that we weren't like pushing towards that, but we talked to him, and he said that there were no signs of a struggle. Like he wasn't kidnapped. You would have seen
Yeah.
patches on the ground of like kicked up dirt and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He wasn't attacked by an animal. There would have been blood. He would have heard an animal. He would have heard
Right.
screaming. It's just like the kid's gone, and he can't be seen again. You know?
It's wild. That is insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, your story was awesome. I loved hearing your story, and it really makes you wonder what else is out there in the woods that we really don't know about. You know?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in the woods. Like I said, I'm a hiker. I also cycled from Pittsburgh to DC, and you spend a lot of time in deep, deep woods doing that. And I mean, the woods are really magical. And I think like I kind of have like a high alert now in the woods when I'm in them. Um, there's some, I had never seen anything like that though, and I spend a good portion of my free time, out there, kind of exploring, doing what I can. I mean, desert, woods, wherever I can go. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, I wonder if there's a real explanation for that. I wonder if there is like a religion or a cult or a sect or a witchcraft or something that dedicates time to that kind of detail with animals. I don't know. It's weird though. It's really weird.
Yeah, like, and it's one of those things too where it's like people are seeing stuff out there, man, and
Hmm.
there's one thing that I really like to bring up whenever people try and tell me that there's nothing out there that we don't know about. Back when I worked in the animal science world before this whole the world got shut down and I lost my job,
Right.
but whatever. So I just do this now
Sure.
full time for now. So whatever. But there was a guy I worked with who was really into all the like Sasquatch stories too, and
Yeah.
his father was head of the Forest Service in Washington, I believe, if I remember correctly. And he used to tell me that his father was, I think he said his father did it for 30 years and used to say that the Sasquatch thing was BS, like the whole time. And
Really?
yeah, but here's where it gets interesting. For years, he's like, if there was anything out here, I would have seen it by now. You know, there's no giant hominids walking around out here, you know. And my friend told me the story that his dad, after like, you know, all these years out there in the wilderness, he was in a region where basically he knew that there were no people, and
Mhm.
he was going through an area where it was raining, and he saw fresh footprints, giant human like
Yep.
footprints with water. Like, it was, with how the rain was going, they were so fresh that
Yeah.
he was watching the footprints be washed in front of him because they were so fresh. So that means that whatever was out there with him was really, really close. And
Yeah.
after that he was like, "Yep, you're right." He's like, I
Wow.
know there's nobody out here." And he's like, those were fresh. There ain't nobody out here. There's definitely something out here. So it just shows
Wow.
that even the tough minds can have their minds changed after they see something that's just so out of place it can't be explained otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. That is bizarre. I fully believe that there are cryptoids and humanoids and things that cryptids and humanoids that are walking around that are like just trying to avoid us. Honestly, I think some are not, but I think in the case of Bigfoot, it's crazy the cult following that the Bigfoot has and the sightings. And I look back through your Facebook posts and saw this skunk ape stuff in Florida, and I mean it's crazy. There has to be, you know what I mean? Like it has to be real. I don't know. That's just me though. I've always kind of had like a we are not the only things on this universe, and there are other beings, and we are not the only ones. And I don't know. I,
What I'm kind of
but yeah,
interested in
totally.
is so you believe in aliens, you believe in UFOs, not unidentified flying objects, but like as in alien spacecrafts coming to Earth, or do you believe that they're just out there somewhere? Maybe they know about us, maybe they don't.
You know what? Like I said, like Reddit. If I was writing a paper and I turned it in, the professor would be like, "Try again," right? Like Reddit is Reddit. But just reading so many accounts of like lights and beings and blacking out and waking up and that kind of stuff, like I think that there are totally alien life forms in different places. I am sure that they've come here. I am sure that they've done what they need to do. I think right now they're like phew, Earth is going through it right now, maybe we should pass by. But um i i I think that it's totally within the possibility to have seen a ship or craft. um like I said, like I read those trucker stories, and those guys talk about, some of their stuff is like, I saw the biggest bobcat I've ever seen, right? It's like typical like dude stuff. But then there's stuff that's like, I saw lights for like 50 miles that I couldn't explain, like I was in the middle of the desert. It's not like I was in a big city. I mean, I think that all of that is within the realm of possibility.
Mm.
I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I totally do. I have never experienced it myself, but I think it's totally possible. Especially in the desert where there's not a lot of civilization packed together like New York City, right? So there's more room, I think, for things like that to go on and be present and be able to be spotted without that reasonable explanation. Like, oh, it was just a city. It was fireworks. It was sirens. I don't know. I
Mm.
don't know if you guys feel the same way, but
I mean, I think, how many years ago was this? I still lived in the Bay Area, so I was living in Oakland. This was
okay.
before this whole podcast even came into mind. So this was a long time
Mm-hmm.
ago. Um, I was meeting up with my friend because he was going to give me some stuff, and we met at the school right by his house. It was, sometime around 11 or 12. Um, and we were chilling out, and he was like, "What the fuck is that?" And I look up into the sky, and I swear to God, these weren't airplanes. They could have been drones. They really could have been drones. But there were some like UFOs, not aliens, UFOs.
For real?
And
What did they look like?
it's not like they weren't close enough for you to make out detail. It was like several miles out, there were a group of 5 or 6 red orbs in the sky moving in an odd pattern. Like, you don't see an airplane or a helicopter go up, down, left, right, up, down,
No, you don't.
They
That's
could be
wild.
drones. They could very well be drones. I have
Sure.
no concrete evidence, because that's something that, like, if someone strapped a big old light to the bottom of their drone and flew it up in the sky with 6 other friends, that's completely plausible. But we stood there. We hopped on top of the tallest part of one of the play structures at that school, and we watched them for a good like 10 minutes, and then they just left.
Wow.
So I definitely think that if I want to take the route of I choose to believe,
Yeah.
that's evidence enough for me right there.
Yeah. I would have felt like that. Totally.
What's that line in the X-Files where Mulder is like, by the way, one of my favorite shows, if anyone hasn't noticed, that's why there's a giant poster in the background. Um, there's one, um, and I think it's like the second or third episode in the series where he um is asked like, why do you continue to believe despite all the evidence to the contrary? And he said, because the evidence to the contrary isn't enough to disprove that these things aren't here.
Agreed.
And I was like, yeah, I like that. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where I sit.
Even if
That's
it's
perfect.
a 0.006 chance, that's still it might be a small percentage, but it's still a chance that these things exist.
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
mean, what was the percentage that Kim Jong Un would die in a botched heart surgery this week? Probably very low, but sure enough, here we are. By the way,
So
that's
he's
still a
confirmed
rumor.
dead.
Not yet. That's
Okay.
that's still a
Okay.
rumor, but
Okay.
I'm still gonna meme it for a little bit. I'm still gonna make jokes about it.
I think that's fair.
I don't know, man. Moral of the story is you don't know what's out there, and you can't have a confirmation bias. So you can't say without a doubt that Bigfoot exists. I've heard like like what Dave, right? So bad with names. Daniel, so bad with names. Sorry. Um, he wholeheartedly believes that he saw Bigfoot, and I believe him. But there's still always a
Yeah.
chance that that's not what he saw. Just like there's
Of
always a
course.
chance that that's what he saw. So like
Right.
you can't be like absolutely yes and absolutely no. That's just not
I
fair.
agree.
But yeah, I mean, we're coming up on 47 minutes here. If you're pretty good with how things have turned out so far.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys so much. It's been really awesome talking to you.
For sure, man. And definitely check out episode 18 for sure. I think you'll really get a kick out of that one, and last
I'm
week's
gonna.
episode too. But yeah, thanks for coming on and chatting with us.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. I actually enjoyed listening to your story. I'm always like really into the whole witchcraft scene. Like I don't practice that kind of stuff myself. I sage my house, but that's about it.
Yeah, I have friends who are into the witchcraft scene, and none of it seems like that kind of witchcraft, right? Like
Mm.
it's pretty crystally and lots of herbs and kind of like moon stuff. It's not really animal pelts and skull. So maybe I'll ask them, but it just seems so nefarious
Yeah.
from my perspective. But yeah, anyway, thank you guys
Hmm.
very much. It was great talking to you, and I
You
will
as
be
well.
listening to your podcast in the future.